They told me I was nothing, and for 4 years they acted like I didn't exist. No calls, no messages, no birthdays, nothing. And then one day, they walked into my office like they owned the place and asked for half of everything I built. I still remember the exact moment they said it, the silence in the room. The way they looked at me like I owed them something, like those 4 years never happened. Like all the nights I spent struggling, all the times I questioned myself, all the moments I almost gave up meant nothing. But what really got me wasn't just the demand, it was the audacity. The same people who told me I would fail, who said I was embarrassing the family, who cut me off like I didn't matter, suddenly standing in front of me. Talking about family and fairness, and the craziest part. For a split second I almost gave in, not because they deserved it, but because a part of me still wanted their approval. A part of me still remembered who they used to be, or at least who I thought they were. But to understand why they came back, why they thought they had a right to anything, you need to understand what happened 4 years earlier, because this didn't start with success. It started with rejection. I didn't grow up thinking my family would ever turn on me. From the outside, we looked normal, close, even. We had dinners together, we showed up for each other, we followed the same routines like most families do. But underneath all of that, there were expectations, unspoken rules. A certain path you were supposed to follow if you wanted to stay in their good books. And I tried. For a long time, I really did. I was the one who didn't argue much. The one who tried to keep the peace. The one who believed that if I just worked hard enough, listened enough, proved myself enough, they'd finally see me the way I wanted to be seen. But there was always this quiet pressure, a feeling that who I was wasn't enough, that I had to fit into this version of success they had already decided for me. And everything was fine as long as I stayed in line. The problem is I didn't. It wasn't one big dramatic moment at first. It started as a thought, an idea I couldn't shake. A different path I wanted to take, something they didn't understand, didn't respect, and definitely didn't support. I knew they wouldn't like it. I knew it would cause problems. But I didn't expect what came next, because the moment I chose myself over their expectations, everything changed. The conversations turned into arguments, the arguments turned into accusations. And slowly, the people who once sat at the same table as me started treating me like a stranger, and I didn't realize it then, but that decision. That one choice to step outside their version of who I should be, that's what led to the 4 years of silence. And eventually to the day they walked back into my life asking for 50%, the first real argument didn't feel like the end. It felt like just another disagreement, something that would pass after a few days of silence like it always did, but this time was different. This time there was something heavier in the air, something final. It started at the dinner table. I told them I didn't want to follow the path they had planned for me anymore. I didn't want the stable job they had lined up, didn't want to live the life they kept insisting was safe. I wanted to build something of my own, something uncertain, something risky. At first they laughed, not in a supportive way, but the kind of laugh that makes you feel small, like you've just said something stupid. Then came the questions. Do you even know what you're doing? Who do you think you are? And then the worst one, you'll come crawling back when you fail. I tried to explain. I tried to make them understand that this wasn't just a random decision. I had a plan. I had been thinking about it for months, but the more I spoke, the less they listened. It was like they had already decided who I was, and nothing I said could change that. The argument escalated quickly. Voices got louder, words got sharper. Things were said that you can't take back, and then in one moment everything snapped. If you walk out that door, one of them said, don't bother coming back. There was a long silence after that, the kind that feels heavier than shouting. I stood there waiting, hoping someone would take it back, say they didn't mean it, but no one did, so I left. At first I thought it was temporary. I thought maybe a few days would pass, emotions would cool down and things would go back to normal, but days turned into weeks, weeks turned into months, and not a single message came through. No, are you okay? No, we're sorry. Nothing. It was like I had disappeared. Those first few months were the hardest. I didn't have a safety net anymore, no one to fall back on. Every mistake felt heavier, every failure hit harder because there was no one there to catch me. There were nights I questioned everything. Nights I stared at the ceiling wondering if they were right, if I had made the biggest mistake of my life. I struggled financially, took on small jobs just to get by. Faced rejection after rejection trying to build something from scratch, and the worst part wasn't the struggle, it was the silence. Knowing that the people who were supposed to care the most didn't even check if I was alive, but something changed after a while. Maybe it was exhaustion, maybe it was pride. Or maybe it was the realization that there was no going back, so the only option left was forward. I stopped waiting for their approval. Stopped imagining the moment they'd call and say they were proud of me, and instead I started focusing on proving it to myself. I worked harder than I ever had before. Late nights turned into early mornings. I failed a lot, ideas didn't work, plans fell apart, but every time something went wrong, I learned something new. Slowly, things started to shift. The first small win didn't look like much from the outside, just a tiny bit of progress, but to me it meant everything. It meant I wasn't completely lost. That maybe, just maybe, I was capable of building something real. That small win turned into another, and then another. Over time, the struggle didn't disappear, but it became different. It felt purposeful, like every setback was part of something bigger. I started gaining confidence, not the loud, showy kind, but the quiet kind. The kind that comes from knowing you've survived things you once thought would break you. Opportunities started showing up. People began taking me seriously. The same kind of ideas that were once dismissed now started getting attention, and before I even fully realized it, I had built something. A real company, a real team. A life that didn't depend on anyone else's approval. 4 years passed like that, not easily, not perfectly, but steadily, and in all that time I never heard from them. Until the day everything came full circle. It was a normal day, nothing unusual. I was in my office going over work, focused on the usual responsibilities that came with running something I had built from nothing, and then the door opened. At first, I didn't even look up. I thought it was just another employee or a routine interruption, but something felt off. The room went quiet in a way that didn't feel normal, so I looked up, and there they were. Standing in front of me like no time had passed, like the last 4 years hadn't existed, the same faces. The same people who told me I wasn't good enough, now standing inside the very thing I had created. For a moment I didn't know what to feel. Shock, confusion, anger, it all hit at once. They didn't apologize, they didn't acknowledge what happened. Instead, they smiled, made small talk, asked how I'd been like this was just another casual visit. And then, eventually, the real reason came out. "We've been hearing about your success," one of them said. And we thought it's only fair we talk about what belongs to the family. I already knew where this was going, but I stayed quiet. "We're family," they continued. "And everything you've built, it's because of where you come from, so we think it's only right we get 50%. 50%, just like that, no hesitation, no shame." In that moment, everything slowed down. All the memories came rushing back. The arguments, the silence, the nights I struggled alone, the moments I needed support and got nothing. And now they wanted half. For a split second, that old version of me showed up again, the one who wanted approval, the one who wanted things to go back to how they used to be. But then I looked around, at the office, at the life I had built, at everything I went through to get here alone, and I realized something very clearly. They weren't here because they cared, they were here because I succeeded. I took a deep breath, looked them in the eye, and for the first time I didn't feel small, I felt in control. I didn't raise my voice, I didn't argue, and I didn't try to prove anything to them anymore. I just looked at them, really looked this time. Not as the people I spent years trying to impress, not as the family I once depended on, but as they were in that moment. Strangers who only showed up when there was something to take. And calmly I said no, not out of anger, not out of revenge, but out of clarity. You don't get to disappear when someone is at their lowest, and then reappear when they're at their highest, asking for a share of the reward. That's not how loyalty works. That's not how love works, and that's definitely not how respect works. For a second, they didn't know how to react. I think they expected hesitation, maybe even guilt. But when they realized I wasn't going to change my mind, the tone shifted, the same way it did years ago, subtle at first, then sharp. Words like ungrateful, selfish, you've changed, and maybe I had, but not in the way they meant. I didn't change into someone cold or heartless. I changed into someone who finally understood their own worth, someone who no longer needed validation from people who only valued them conditionally. Because the truth is, those 4 years didn't just build my career, they built me. They taught me what it feels like to stand alone and still keep going. They taught me that support isn't always guaranteed, but strength can be built anyway. And most importantly, they taught me that not everyone who shares your blood is meant to share your journey. I used to think success would fix everything. That one day when I finally made it, they'd come back, apologize, and we'd somehow go back to being a family again. But success doesn't rewrite the past, it reveals it. It shows you who was really there and who only shows up when there's something to gain. As they walked out of my office that day, it felt strangely familiar, like history repeating itself, but this time the roles were different. This time I wasn't the one being left behind. And the truth is, it didn't hurt the way it used to, because I finally understood something I wish I knew years ago. Sometimes losing people isn't the tragedy. Sometimes it's the turning point, and if I had to go through it all again, the rejection, the silence, the struggle, I would still make the same choice. Because everything I built started the moment I stopped waiting for them to believe in me.